The Stolen Lake by Joan Aiken, 8. The hotel provided them with a dozen burros for riders and baggage, and so they proceeded at donkey pace. 2 of the burros had a litter strung between them into which the unconscious Mr. Holystone was fastened. The procession was led by a guide, Marcus Dillon, who, with provisions for the journey, had also been supplied by the hotel. "What did you do about paying?" Dido asked Lieutenant Windward, edging her burro alongside his. Captain Hughes had had much of the expedition's supply of ready cash about his person when he was imprisoned, and so they were short of funds. The management at the Sydney would give them anything when they saw... the management at the Sydney would give us anything when they saw the Queen's permit. I told them that we would return in 6 or 7 days and that the captain would pay the whole shot at the end of our visit. I do not propose to fork out any of my own bizouts, while he is a prisoner. We need what little money we have on our way to Lyonese." "I don't know what we'd spend it on," said Dido. "I don't see too many hot pie sellers or cockle stands round here." They were crossing the stony upland plain which surrounded Bath Regis. Much of the ground was rocky and uncultivated, studded here and there by sigsy thorn and a species of cactus resembling a giant spiny hand. Not another human being was in sight. "It sure is a drearsome part," Dido shivered, yet despite the cold her spirits had lifted on leaving the town of Bath. So had those of her companions. Even the waxen face of Mr. Holystone had taken on a faint tinge of color. Having left it, they realized for the first time to the full what a terrible oppressive atmosphere permeated Queen Ginevra's capital. "We have several hundred miles to go before reaching Lyonese," pointed out the lieutenant. "There must be towns or villages along the way." "Hope so," grunted Multiple, "or it's going to be sharp sleeping at night." The pre-dawn air was razor cold. As they left the plain and began to crawl at what seemed like a snail's pace up the vast slopes of Mount Damiac, the increasing altitude rendered breathing harder and harder. Lieutenant Windward had, however prudently, seen that the party was equipped with a large bundle of roomy lilies wrapped in damp moss for the use of the travelers when disturbed by lack of oxygen. The donkeys, fortunately, seemed unaffected by the thinness of the air. Dido was very glad of her mount. She was not certain that she would be able to walk far on her own. Moreover, it was comfortably warm, like riding on a barrel of hot tar covered by a hearth rug. Presently, however, the sun shot up, and at once began to send down rays of such torrid heat that they made haste to don the straw hats with which Windward, on the advice of the guide, had also provided them. "Awkward sort of climate," remarked Dido. "Freezing one minute, roasting the next. Hey, Noah, don't you want to lay a hat over poor Mr. Holy's face? No sense in getting him sunstroke on top of all else." During the days of Mr. Holystone's illness, no one had shaved him, and his beard, of brownish gold color, had grown several inches. So had his hair, which previously he had worn very short. "He's a right good-looking fellow with a beard," Dido thought, as Noah carefully balanced the sombrero over the invalid's face. As the sun climbed higher, it illuminated the gigantic symmetrical cones, the fantastic snow-covered peaks and pinnacles, like spherical cities of ice, that surrounded them on every side. Bath Regis was now a mere dot in the distance. When they reached the top of a lofty ridge, Dido, looking back, let out a cry of wonder. "What's to do?" inquired Mr. Multiple, kicking his burro till it came level with hers. "Look at all that flat land we've been riding across, Mr. Mully. See them lines in the rock?" "I could hardly miss them," he said. "I reckon they are geological strata. They are far too huge for people to have had anything to do with them. Why, some of them must be more than 50 miles long." From side to side of the upland plain, long lines were to be seen, as if some god or giant had leaned down from the heavens, and with an idle fingernail scraped a series of huge drawings over the countryside. More and more of the pattern became visible as the party mounted higher. And when they halted for the noon meal, Dido said, "Well, I wasn't certain before, but now I am. Look, Mr. Windward, ain't these marks down there the exact same as Mr. Holystone's birthmark?" "Holystone's birthmark? Can't say as I ever knew he had one," Mr. Windward said rather skeptically. Dido, however, rolled back the blanket to show the sick man's forearm, and Mr. Windward was obliged to agree that there was a remarkable likeness. "I often noticed that mark when he was a peeling spuds," said Dido. "It must be nothing more than a coincidence," observed Windward. "For why should a man have a mark on his arm that's the same as one nobody can see unless they're on top of a 14,000-foot mountain?" "I dunno," said Dido, "but I reckon it's lucky for us as we brought Mr. Holy along. Looks like he belongs to these parts all right." Lieutenant Windward absently pulled his chronometer from his pocket to check it against the position of the sun in the sky, and uttered an exclamation. "What's up?" said Multiple. "It started going again." He set it to the correct time. "So's mine," said Multiple, pulling out his turnip watch. "Well, if that don't beat cockfighting." They soon started off again. Dillon, the guide, a wizened, talkative little man, was emphatic that they must reach the valley of Lake Arianrod before dusk and not risk being overtaken by night on the bare mountainside, or they would freeze to death, not to mention having their blood drained by vampires or being pecked to pieces by giant owls. "Auroch's bad along here. Atiem. Atque Atiem. Yet remains a long way to go, sirs," he kept saying anxiously. Dido felt she would be quite pleased to see an auroch. She had heard them mentioned so frequently without ever actually encountering one, that she had begun to doubt their existence and wonder if they were not bearing the blame for somebody else's activities. "Which is Mount Araby?" she asked Dillon. He pointed ahead and to the left. "We go round now. Circumventimus. Back of Mount Daniak. Lacus. Sacratissimos. Ariandrod water is lying between Damiac, Araby, Calabi, and Catalonde mountains. Araby not first mountain you see, but second, having two big teeth like Cayman. Very bad mountain, Araby." "Why bad?" Dido wanted to know, studying Araby's towering twin peaks. Dillon made the double circle sign. "Belonged to King Arwen, king of the Black World. Aurochs roost on top, pecking at stars. Old Keridog, the guardian, lived there, in the temple of Sul, in Sul's town. I'm not taking you past Araby. Ladies of night come there too." "Who?" inquired Dido. "Are the ladies of night?" Dillon traced the two circles again and squinted through them at Dido. "Our ladies, better not speaking names." He made a gesture as if snipping with shears. "Queen our ladies who make dress." "Do you mean," said Dido, greatly puzzled, "the Queen's mistress of the robes and her people, Lady "Hush!" Dillon nodded nervously, glancing around as if on the lookout for eavesdroppers, then urged his donkey faster to get away from Dido, who rode on very thoughtfully. "If this Ellen," she thought, "is a prisoner on Araby, I reckon I know who put her there, and I reckon I can guess why. But no use talking about it to Windward or Mr. Mully. They'd think I've got windmills in my head. I'll just have to keep a sharp eye out myself. Best do that anyhow, if there's really aurochs about." The existence of aurochs was soon confirmed. A huge shadow drifted across the track, and all the burros shied and brayed nervously. As they descended the pass, more of the great triangular shadows crossed the mountainside. "Blimey," said Dido to Mr. Multiple. "If we could put a couple of those on show at the Battersea Fun Fair, we'd all lay by enough mint sauce to buy Threadneedle Street. Ain't they the ugliest monsters you ever saw?" The aurochs, becoming inquisitive, wheeled in close and closer to the cavalcade, with hardly a flip of their great fur-covered leathery wings. Their claws could be seen, and their cruel beaks, with protruding tusks on either side. Though Dido tried to joke about them, it was plain they were no laughing matter. They were evidently attracted by the sight of Mr. Holystone, motionless in his litter. They drifted lower and lower. Once or twice Lieutenant Windward discharged his musket at them, and they would flap away to a distance with raucous shrieks. But they invariably returned, and their number increased as the day drew on. Mr. Multiple, an excellent marksman, managed to wing one with a pistol shot. It fluttered, wobbling away, squawking hideously, to a cactus-studded knoll 100 yards from the track. and the travelers then witnessed a horrible spectacle, for the other aurochs all swooped down on their wounded comrade and in a very short time devoured it completely, leaving nothing but a few shreds of fur and splinters of bone on the sandy ground. "Ugh, the cannibals!" shouted Noah Gusset. "Still, at least it keeps their nasty minds off us." Unfortunately, by the time the aurochs had finished their repulsive feast, the travelers had reached a very dangerous section of the pass they were traversing. This was a valley region of strange heaving, pulsing bogs and quagmires, colored in bright, prismatic hues, dark red, ochre yellow, and sulphurous, iridescent blue. Great gouts of steam drifted up from the ground, and from time to time an explosive mountain of mud would suddenly spurt up into the air, each time from a different spot. "It is a thermal region," said the knowledgeable Lieutenant Windward. "I have seen such places in Iceland, when I was second mate on the Arctic Tern. They are geysers caused by volcanoes around about." "Careful. Quam sererim here, sirs, but extra careful," warned Dillon. "Get stuck in mud here, you sink down to King Arawan." The burros were evidently well aware of the danger. They flipped their long ears, hee-hawed, and stepped nervously and delicately along the narrow, slippery path, which wound a circuitous way between heaving, steaming pools and spouting fountains. Every now and then the party were spattered by hot mud. A dismal stench hung about the place. "Like unwashed Christmas socks full of rotten potatoes," Dido said. Strange vegetation grew in this valley, nurtured by its dark, unwholesome warmth. Fleshy, gray-green leaves clustered round the bubbling pools, and grotesque, sickly-scented flowers hung from fat, pale stalks on the rock faces. I'll be glad when we get out of here," commented Mr. Multiple, thumping his burro to make it go faster. But the aurochs, emboldened by the slow pace of the travelers, now circled in closer and closer. One of them wheeled so near to Plum's donkey that it panicked and shied away sideways, slipping off the track and tossing its rider into a great heaving pool of mud. Plum yelled frenziedly, trying to extricate himself from the gluey, dripping morass. "Keep still, man!" shouted Lieutenant Windward. "We'll throw you a rope. Don't struggle. You would only sink yourself faster." But before Windward could drag a rope out of his saddlebag, the hovering aurochs, assured of a helpless prey, had swooped down in a flurry of black, hairy wings, snapping beaks and flying talons. Two of them fought for the donkey, and the larger won. With a screech of triumph, it snatched up the wretched animal by its saddle and flapped away, dwindling in no time to a speck in the distance. Meanwhile, two others had dragged poor Plum out of the mud pool and were battling over him, while Windward and Multiple, cursing with frustration, waited for a chance to shoot without injuring their companion. No such chance was given. While the two aurochs were fighting, a third swooped in, snatched up the helpless man, suddenly soared up on a rising current of hot air, and disappeared behind a crag. Windward and Multiple both fired at it, but both missed. "Devil take the brute!" cried Windward, reloading with shaking hands. "We must go after it. We must rescue Plum." He kicked his burro into a gallop. "No, sir, no gallop, no gallop," shouted Dillon urgently. "Festina lente. You go in mud, we all go. Aurochs eat a lot of us. No possible save that hombre. He done for. Aurochs eat quick." Remembering the hideous speed with which the aurochs had devoured their own companion, Lieutenant Windward was reluctantly obliged to give way. "He's right, sir, I'm afraid," said Multiple, and Noah Gusset muttered, "Those greedy monsters can swallow a man before you can crown your pistol. Poor old Plum's mincemeat by now, no doubt of that. He a rare voice for a shanty when he were in a mood, did old Plum, and could knit faster than anyone in the forecastle." Daunted and appalled by this horrid mishap, the remaining 5 travelers drew closer together, Mr. Multiple riding alongside the sick man with his pistol ready cocked. Fortunately, they soon left the thermal region, climbed up through a narrow rocky defile, and presently came in sight of their first objective. "Arianrhod," said Dillon briefly, pointing ahead and downward. For a moment, the travelers were deluded into thinking that the lake was full of water. "Can the Queen have been mistaken?" exclaimed Mr. Multiple. "Or King Mabon have restored it already?" Perhaps a spring has replenished it, said Lieutenant Windward. But then they realized that the vast star-shaped basin lying around the four mountains was filled only with white mist, which billowed and heaved like the waves of an insubstantial sea. And we'll pause there.